Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the stream slash first video on the channel. Make sure my videos are loading. It looks like we've got video. Let's make sure we got audio. Hey, that sounds good. Sounds like it's actually even a reasonable volume too. Alright guys, and girls, everybody, welcome to the stream. Potentially even maybe some AI will be watching this in the future actually, so welcome literally everybody. My name is Glenn, and we're starting a new series on a new channel, and this is going to be mostly dedicated to Power Platform, learning about Power Platform itself, specifically focused on PoweraApps inside of Power Platform and how you can utilize it to really do just about anything. Power Platform is a collection of tools from Microsoft. You can find out about it. Actually, let's go to the full Power Platform site here. Just search for it. There we go. Thanks, Ping. So this is the docs. I was actually looking for some nice Microsoft, branded documentation. But anyway, the some nice Microsoft branded commercial front page here, but that describes it. But Power Platform is the suite of tools including Power Automate, Power BI, Power Pages, which is a part of PowerApps itself, and Power Virtual Agents, and then PowerApps. And it's built on top of Microsoft's proprietary database software solution, which they call now Microsoft Dataverse. It used to be called Microsoft CDS, the Common Data Service. This is basically a wrapper for SQL database, and with a really nice front end for it that connects to this PowerApps platform, which is a low-code / no-code, which is a bit of a misleading misnomer, development platform for developing business applications. And you can use this to essentially automate or streamline any business process that you have. If you're, depending on the size of your business and your business processes, this Power Platform could actually be a complete game changer for your business. I think Microsoft claims on average companies have, 140% ROI over 3 years after implementing processes through the Power Platform. And what I want to do on this stream, on this channel specifically, is focus on what my strength is within Power Platform so far, which is developing PowerApps, and specifically Canvas apps inside of PowerApps and what you can do with them, which is a ton of stuff. So we'll continue our just little introduction here into what the platform itself is. So the world needs great solutions, build yours faster. The idea behind Power Platform and PowerApps itself is that it gives your org, your team, you the ability to really focus in on the processes and data that are important to you and develop business processes around them that really streamline and turbocharge the way that you do business. So within PoweraApps, you can work with a wide range of data sources. You can work with the previously mentioned internal Dataverse, which, as you can see, and this hasn't even been rebranded yet to Dataverse. They're still calling it Common Data Service here, but you can use a SharePoint Online, you can use a SharePoint on-premises server, you can use a SQL server, you can use Amazon AWS, you can use any range of external database solutions that exist in the wild, in cloud or on-premises. If you want to run your own local SQL servers, you can do that too. Or you can connect to Excel data as well, which is a common starting point, I would say, for most business. Probably they're starting from Excel, they're graduating, maybe they're going to graduate some Excel, and they're going to move it into a SharePoint Online, and then maybe they'll work with that for a little while, they'll understand the benefits of that, and then maybe they'll migrate that into Dataverse one day. And that might be a common migration path. Or they may go right from Excel right to Dataverse. Or they may find that SharePoint is good enough for their solution forever and stick with SharePoint. There's solutions for every level. So they're showing you just make an app. Click here. Make an app. Oh, you can actually click here to advance this. How cool. I bet this is a Power App. So they're showing you basically the way you connect to your data is through a connector. And a connector is like it's a way of defining a pathway to data and then utilizing and then wrapping it in an authentication sequence that you predefine. So, for example, if you have a authentication to your SharePoint Online, you would make a connector. You would use the SharePoint Online connector to make a connection to your SharePoint Online server using authentication details that you choose in that moment. So most likely it would be your authenticated user. In some cases, you may choose to use a service account or something like that to connect to data. That's a bit of a more advanced idea, but it's possible. But essentially that is what you're doing, is you're wrapping your authentication to the data and then baking it into the application, and the application is using your authentication to communicate with the data. And they're showing you just how to make a new app. We'll go over all this together. They're showing you the studio. You know what? Screw this. I'll show you the studio. I'm gonna just assume, I'm gonna make some assumptions. We're gonna make a lot of assumptions here that you have already provisioned yourself an environment. If you don't know how, go to PowerApps.com and follow the instructions. Pardon me, make a developer environment, and you can get a 30-day free trial to work with Dataverse in your developer environment. I believe Microsoft is pretty lenient on extending trials. If you may automatically get your trial extended if you're using your account a lot. That's what happened to me. I just was logging into my account every day, and then I got an email notification saying that my trial had been extended to 12 months. The same may happen to you. It may not. You may have to ask, but they do seem to be pretty lenient on allowing people / developers to have extended access into accounts, into a trial account, into environments to work in. So you might as well just give it a try. So when you do, you'll have 2 levels of administration here. I'll just go over this super quickly. you'll have the Power Platform Admin Center, where you can go in and you can see your different environments. They'll be listed here, and you can see analytics on your Dataverse and so on and so forth. This is where you're going to go in to your AAD and manage, sorry, your Entra Admin Center now. Let's use proper terminology. It's being renamed. But this is where you're going to manage your groups and give access to your environments through users, and grant them licenses to use your software and so on and so forth. So this is a bit well beyond the scope of this current episode right now, but so that's that. So, and once you're actually logged in, you go to make.powerapps.com. Then you can, in the top right here, you'll be able to at least see your environments if you have any, or you'll be able to click this Try It Now button and then make your own environments, and then from there you'll be able to go forth. And I think you can make up to 3 or 5. I think it's 3 developer environments. And an environment is not anything scary or anything like that. Environment is simply just a collection of apps and data. And a environment, and that's a bit of an oversimplification. It's apps, data, and many other things, metadata, and so forth. But the main idea is that an environment is like an encapsulation for a dataverse, and then a collection of applications that either have been developed to work with that dataverse, or potentially have been developed to work with data sources outside of that dataverse. But hopefully that didn't just confuse you to the infinite degree. Probably did. We haven't even opened PowerApps yet, and I've already scared you guys away. But yeah, so once you've gotten an environment, you've provisioned your environment, or you've created your environment, you've provisioned a dataverse for inside that environment if you want to work within Dataverse. And future videos and streams all show working with SharePoint online, and I'll show importing data from Excel and so forth. But that's just not how I wanted to get started today. And really actually have no idea what the structure of these videos and so forth are going to be. I'd love to develop this into sort of classroom experience and gain experience in that type of setting for myself, for myself as an instructor, and also as a developer, to be able to put myself out there to make mistakes in front of people, and to have a situation where I'm in front of a crowd of people, and I don't know the answer to the question that I need to answer, which is incredibly uncomfortable for, I would dare say, everybody, unless you're a psycho. But the interesting thing about that is it can become a practiced skill. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. And if you never do it, then you'll never get good, right? So it's something that we're going to struggle with together. So once you've gotten your environment and your Dataverse provisioned, and you've opened up your environment here, you can start at the create screen. And if you really truly have absolutely no idea what you're doing, you can select one of these options and just really begin to use like a wizard, essentially. So there are a ton of bumpers available if you're trying to start fresh and just purely understand what PowerApps is. It's your trial account. You have no idea, so you can you have an Excel spreadsheet. Maybe you just downloaded one from the internet or something, just to practice some data, just to understand it. You can start right from scratch. You can click this, select your file, import it, and go. Or you can hit blank app and go from there. If you're a bit of a more seasoned developer, you may have already noticed that there's something in the bottom left here called solutions. Of course, Microsoft is going to provide, considering this is like supposed to be a no-code / low-code platform where you can come in and have literally no experience and click a few buttons and make an application. They're going to give you the tools to be able to do that, right? Through the create and through these learn screens. They're directing you towards learning content, and I highly recommend you check out as much of this as you can stomach. You may not necessarily want to look at their all of their guided learnings. You may want to focus specifically on things that are pertinent to your project or your use case or whatever, or the things that you just don't understand, where you may want to start at the beginning and do every single thing left to right. That's up to you. But there's tons of resources out there. There's communities, there's forums, there's Reddit, there's other YouTube channels and communities of great creators that I have used and abused to learn myself, and I recommend that you don't close any avenue of learning to yourself when it comes to development. There might be something out there that you never thought of before that someone's doing, and if you're not looking for it, you're never going to find it, because they're not going to look for you to tell you. So I would say being in this video is step number one. Hopefully this isn't the literal first thing you've ever watched about PowerApps, because you are probably clueless and lost at this point. If it is. But let's say you're a little bit more seasoned or savvy and you notice the solutions button. So you can see that Microsoft's giving us, even though this is quote unquote no code or low code, we've got a solutions tab here, and inside solutions we can create a new solution. Let's just call this our demo solution. Actually, we'll call this learning stream solution. And we'll use our default publisher. You can make a new publisher if you want, put your name on it. Don't be afraid. So you can see it's made our solution for us, and then it dropped us right into the solution. We can go back and we can see that now our PowerApps learning streams solution is here, and we can click on it to go deeper into it, and it's got a bunch of different objects that it's broken down for us, and we can create any sort of new entity we want and slap it into our solution. We've got apps, we've got flows through Power Automate, we've got chatbots through Power Virtual Agents, we've got dashboards. I guess these would be through model apps potentially, or through views. I haven't really messed with dashboards. We've got reporting, security. I haven't messed with either of these, but you can create security roles and then import them, export them into other environments through the solution, which is cool. And then you've got tables. Tables are going to be your Dataverse tables that are going to hold your data. Then we've also got choices. Choices are global enumerations that you can create to like hard type data types. So for example, we could make a choice of colors and put blue, red, and green into the choice. And then in our code, we can reference our colors choice and get blue, red, and green as a hard type. Then there's component libraries and connections and variables. These are, and then even deeper, there's other, and you can also write in your own custom plugins and code as well, and if you need to reach for even deeper development tools, depending on what's required. And your solution file holds all of this as sort of a container, and not as sort of a container, as a literal container. And that container can then be exported and brought into other environments. So for example, we can hit this export solution button and actually just download this file onto our hard drive and then import it into another solution. So for example, if you're a software developer and you've developed some sort of solution for an organization and you want to sell it to them, you're gonna basically sell them your solution file essentially, and they're going to import it into their environment and start using your software. Well, let's see. Okay. Okay, so once you've created your solution, and you just want to make an app, it will make a Canvas app inside the solution. Or you may want to make a table first, or you may want to import some data first, depending on what you're starting with. But for the purpose of this first video, where we're just first jumping in, we're just going to make ourselves a Canvas app here. So let's just hit new, just to go back from the beginning here. We're going to go to make.powerapps.com. We're going to make sure we select the proper environment that we want to work in. Right now we're working in PowerApps Learning Content. Then I went to Solutions. I created a new solution. I called it PowerApps Learning Streams. I clicked into it, and now that I'm in this solution, I'm clicking New, App, and Canvas App, and that's how I'm creating this app. So let's call this stream demo. Let's just call this stream demo. Should we number this stream? Let's call this stream number 1 demo. Or stream demo 1. Are we already having don't have naming? Naming regret is the biggest. Is the worst. It's not the biggest thing, but it is one of the most terrible things. Alright, so we're in PowerApps Studio. It's going to give us this little pop-up. Here are a few ways to start building an app from a blank canvas. We can make a form or a gallery. I'm just going to choose to did not show me this again, and we're gonna skip that. Okay. So now you're actually finally 20 minutes into the video, actually open PoweraApps now, finally. This is what you're presented with. The blank canvas of the Canvas app. So the first thing you notice is that there's nothing here, and it's asking you to add an item from the insert pane or connect to data. We didn't create any data. We're going to do that later. So we want to add an item from the insert pane. I just click this, and it automatically switched this view over here. But let's start over here. This is one of the first places you're going to need to understand about the studio itself, and this is called PowerApps Studio. It's just this general thing. And one thing you probably obviously recognized immediately is that everything happens in a web browser. By the way, when you're building, there is no PowerApps desktop application that you are going to build your applications in. Everything that you do is in a web browser. I personally like to use Edge. But you can use Chrome or Firefox. I'm sure they work just as well. But yeah, so once you understand that, that's really cool, because that means you can develop anywhere. Your PowerApps are developed for anywhere, and you're developed anywhere, and they're developed to be used anywhere. So essentially, a PowerApp is just basically a website that you give people explicit permission to go to. And the studio itself, excuse me. Sorry about that. The studio itself is just how you do that web design, essentially. That's basically what it boils down to. Now, I do want to stress these are apps. These are heavy applications. They're not just necessarily just dry websites. There is Power Pages for that, where you need customer-facing page, or you just need a light web-driven solution. But the PowerApps themselves, they are full-blown applications. So we've got the tree view. This is where you're going to see all of your entities and your objects. So far, we've got the app object and a screen object, just screen one. Then we've got the insert view. So if we insert a label, we just click text label and just drop it right into our screen. So now we've got something, we've got a control. We go back to tree view, and we see that screen one now contains label one. Gave it a name automatically. Then we've got the data view. There's no data inside of our app right now, but we could choose to add data either through Dataverse. In this environment itself, by default, this table is showing all the tables inside of our current Dataverse that the Power App is sitting on top of. But you're not limited to that data. You can change your environment, and this view will now switch and give you access to other environments. So for example, if you have a environment that is strictly used for your production data, or your test data, or any sort of level of data, and you want to develop an app to only work with that source, you can do that. If you are pulling data, let's say you have two applications that sort of work in tandem, like two data sources that sort of work in tandem but don't ever really specifically talk to each other, then you can make an app that bridges the gap between those two data sources, that then literally joins them together into an application by just simply pointing your data lookup to a different environment. And then there's also AI models. I don't personally have a lot of experience with this, and we're not going to dive into this today, but you can take a look at that. And then there's also connectors as well. I didn't really talk too much about connectors, but essentially connectors, I sort of mentioned them when I talked about SharePoint and using a connector, a connection, excuse me, with the SharePoint connector. But a connector is essentially an API wrapper. And there are a ton of connectors built in. Some work with your base PowerApps license. Some are in preview, meaning that they are currently being offered by Microsoft for you to test and evaluate, but are not necessarily approved for production. And then there are also premium connectors, which are connectors that will require a higher level of licensing. That you may not be able to use these on your trial plan, but if you activate your license and if you get a premium plan license, which is I think the P1 plan, or I'm not sure. I won't actually say because I don't know, but you'll have access to that. But you'll notice that there's some that are free, like Adobe Acrobat Sign. You can use this connector for free. SharePoint is a free connector as well. These are Microsoft approvals. This is a new, I think it's kind of new-ish connector for approval workflows. And those can work through Teams as well, which is really cool. But yeah, as you can see, there are many connectors. These are all going to be most of, if not all of, definitely not all of, but many of your APIs that you're going to want to connect to are going to be found here. Like, you want to connect to WebEx, you can do that. So what these connectors are going to give you are an object that you can then address that has, functions that map to the API functions that have been exposed through the connector. And if you didn't find what you were looking for in that list of 30 million connectors, you can, of course, create a custom connector yourself, and you can do that through a wizard. In fact, inside of the PowerApps studio, not in the studio itself, but through the PowerApps admin. So you don't even really need to understand coding or how an API works, or even what an API is, to utilize connectors, utilize connections to an API, and then make your own connection to a non-existing connector. And we'll cover that in future videos and streams. We'll get to that. As you can see, this quote-unquote low-code, no-code platform has quite a bit of depth to it. Okay, so continuing through the view here on the left, we can see that we've got media as well. You can upload up to 200 megs of video, audio, and images. including I believe GIFs, animated GIFs play as well. Haven't experimented with that, but we probably will on a future stream, I would guess. Because that just seems cool. The downside here is that you only get 200 meg, first of all. But if you think about it, 200 meg is kind of a lot. Because, again, this app is a live service that's streamed to the recipient. So if that recipient is on a desktop computer connected to like gigabit Ethernet, then 200 meg is nothing. But if this user is on a tablet in like, you know, some warehouse remote like location somewhere, or like, you know, and they're connecting you know, via Wi-Fi or something like that, they may not have the ability to download 200 meg really, you know, in a few seconds. They may need something a lot more lightweight, and so you need to consider that when you're developing your application. That's what I'm getting at here. There's also Power Automate built in here, so you can create new flows, and then address those flows. You can create with your flow, you're essentially creating an object that has functions in it. It's essentially a mini connector. They'll work the same way. They'll work in very similar ways, I should say. Not the same way, but they'll work very similarly to each other. But with the flow, and we'll have to go into this in future streams and videos, but flows are a whole other wing of the Power Platform that can do a ton of things for you. I would forget most of them if I tried to list them all right now, but flows are incredibly strong, and you can use flows to extend the abilities of your Canvas app as well. You can make a flow to connect to APIs, internal or even external as well. So you can use that as a secondary way to collect data from an external source. And then we got variables. Hopefully you guys know what a variable is, but if not, we'll go over that. But this gives you a way to look at all your different variable definitions and uses in the app. This is kind of a pretty useful screen, but also kind of a useless screen in some ways. And we'll go over that in the future and why I say that. And then here's your Advanced Tools tab. This is where you get the monitor and the tests. These I can't open the test window, but I was trying to get this to open in a separate tab. But these are your debugging and testing tools, essentially. The monitor is a real-time look into your application. So if you have your app running and you start the monitor, this is going to give you a look into all of the reads and the writes of the data streams that your application is doing and performing. And it can give you, it's your standard out as well. So if you need to write things to console, this is your console. And this monitor is incredibly useful. You will have a very hard time developing complex applications without at least utilizing the monitor in some way, shape, or form. I don't recommend having the monitor open all the time because it does run pretty slowly, especially when it runs slowly, and it will make your app studio and consequently your computer start to run pretty slowly as well, depending on how many reads and writes you're doing and how strong your computer is, basically. Okay, the last thing that's irreplaceable here, and probably the most important thing, is the search. This is going to give you find in files, which also may be available to you depending on what app settings you have set for your app through the editor as well, through Control F on the text editor. But anyway, that's going to be the run through from that left side, and you can collapse this with the hamburger up here. And this cog will give you your app settings, and this button that I've literally never pushed, that I'm gonna push for the first time, is Ask a Virtual Agent. So if you are like down bad, real bad, you can talk to a chatbot and ask it really super basic things. I don't think virtual agents inside PowerApps Studio right now are that good. I'll be perfectly honest with you. They need work. But maybe I only think that because they can't really help me do the things that I'm trying to do anymore. Whereas if I was more of a noob, then it would make more sense. Anyway, so you can see I dropped the label on here, but there are tons of controls, and that's the next thing that we're going to look at inside of PowerApps. You can see this insert tab here. I'm going to collapse the popular tab because I really wish that they would just remove this popular and change this to a favorites, and then let me favorite with the star and populate a box. Microsoft, if you're listening, thank you. Anyway, so we've got input controls. We've got buttons. We've got a text input. And you see when I'm moving these around, you get these assistants with lining things up, like this snapped into that. You can see I can snap into this too, so I can line this up as well. So it's a very like it's a WYSIWYG web design essentially, but form design. You also get a pen input. Let me actually like show off these controls one by one. Because they have different properties too. So, thing to not just there's so much to understand, and I'm trying to teach you from like someone who doesn't know anything, but also make this not boring for people that kind of know what they're doing too. So, I'm sure I'm failing at both. Anyway, so you guys understand the concept of a button. Anytime that you want to interact with your app in PowerApps, there's two ways to do it. Well, there's several ways to do it, but there's two ways that I'm going to cover right now. The first is to hold the Alt key, and then that changes your interaction from this editor mode to an interact mode. And by holding the Alt key and then left clicking my mouse, I can select the button, and this actually is as if the app is running. Whereas if I'm not holding the Alt key and I left click the button, I'm dragging the button around, right? The other way is to use the app preview, which is up here in the upper right, this play button, or hit the F5 key. So if I hit F5 right now and hit F5 again, that toggles. But see, it's giving me this pop-up. Did you know the thing that I just told you? Yeah, I did know. I did know that, and I just told you guys, but that pop-up will pop up for you guys too. it'll be giving you information. So when you're in play mode, you can also interact with your app in exactly the same way. And not only that, but you can see in the right side of the screen here, you can also change your view. Like for example, if you want to see what your view looks like on an iPhone 8 or an iPad Pro, you can do that, no problem. You can flip it, or you can go back to web. For this video and probably the next couple, at least for now, excuse me, we'll be strictly dealing with web interfaces, but there's no rhyme or reason why your apps wouldn't be able to be run on any number of devices. Please don't show me that again, even though I think I told you not to show me that already once. So the other thing about controls are they have properties, and each control is going to have different properties. A lot of them have shared properties. Like for example, anything that let me rephrase and not use the word anything. I'll use more careful terms. Most controls that display text will show we'll have varying properties like fonts. We can change fonts. There's built-in fonts. So we can change this to dancing script or to a courier new. And we can change the font size, so we can make this really big. Or we can make this really small. And you see how that's scaling to remain pixel perfect within the button, but you can also change the alignments of the buttons too. Let me make this bigger. So you can actually see it and see the effects, but you can justify the buttons, middle. You can toss padding in there. Just to move things even further. You get a decent bit of customizable sway here with the properties, across everything. And these are your visual properties, and we'll go into formulas and stuff later. We haven't even gotten to the no code, low code part of the no coding yet. But so this is your button, and we'll leave that up on the screen. Then we've also got a text input, and this can be single line or multi-line. So if you want to have a multi-line edit box, that's fine. This can also be a password encoded box, so we're just blanking out your password if you want people to be entering in sensitive information. Text boxes also have a bunch of properties, other properties to associate with them. That they have the font property that you would expect. They have font weighting. The button also had font weighting. I didn't show that, but and font style, underlining, strike through, so on and so forth, and all the general things that you would expect to be able to do that. But then you also have little things like a clear button, or you have a spell checker built in or baked in as well. You can set a max length on your text box as well, so you can set this to be 10. Like if you want to enforce validation, pre-validation on your input form. If this control can only if this data sources column that you're writing this value into can only hold 10 characters at most, you can limit the text box to only hold 10 characters to begin with, so you can pre-validate that. You also get, all controls will have things like visibility. So if I hit, now it's gone. I'll have to go back to the tree view and select it. You can always go back to tree view and select. And this actually is a great reminder before we get too deeper into this to talk about the most important property of every control, which is its name. And you can see its name in a bunch of different places. The one you'll notice the most when you're working is the tree view. So you can see that screen1 is the name of our screen, and you can also see its name over here. And you can rename this in a multitude of ways. You can right click on this and click rename and get that. You can click on the ellipses and click rename. You can double click on this and rename it, or you can click over here and rename it, or you can hit F1 on accident, or you can come over here and click on this pencil. So don't forget to rename your controls. And one thing that is really important is to make sure that you follow a decent naming convention as well. That's something that you will learn over time. If you're a developer, you already are nodding your head, and if you're a newbie, you're saying, what's a name? But you'll learn, and you'll learn quick. So, for example, what I like to do, and I'll give you guys my naming conventions. For example, this is, I like to use a 3-letter prefix in lowercase that denotes the type of the object. So in this case, this is a text box. So this is a txt, denotes that it's a text control. And then you want to give it a name. So this is just our demo text box. For now, this just works because it's demo text box, and we'll just hit enter. So now we have something that makes way more sense than text box 1, right? And we'll rename this from button 1 to BTN, which I like to call for buttons. And we'll call this demo button. Now, here's where we like to make exceptions to our rules. In PowerApps, the screen reader reads off the name of the, if the user has the screen reader enabled, the screen reader will read the name of the screen when your PowerApp navigates screens. So if we follow a convention like sure demo screen, that might sound weird in the text reader, right? But if we just name this demo screen, that's gonna come out pretty crystal clear in our screen reader, and anyone using that screen reader is gonna have a better understanding of what's going on. One really beautiful thing about PowerApps is that everything is built with accessibility in mind from like the ground up. So you can really build your application to be truly accessible to anyone with vision, hearing impairment, so forth. So now we've got that. Again, we can hit play. We've limited it to 10. Let's cut that. Let's make this a multi-line. Let's make it bigger. Wait, do we look at our clear button? Yeah, so if you're typing in here, and you get that, we can hit that X and we clear that out. So that's how that control works. But let's remove our max length and let's set this to multi-line. So just so we can type in there. And we'll make this a little bit smaller. And we'll make our font size a little bit smaller, but this. Oh, can we not set maximum? Oh, did it not? Oh, it did. So, okay. So we need to set this to some maximum length. So we'll set it to 1K. Infinity is not an acceptable length for your text box, apparently. But we can set it to some really high number. And that's totally fine. Okay, so the next thing we were looking at was this pen input, which is pretty interesting control. It's pretty basic. This would mostly apply for some use case where you needed to have someone probably sign a document or something like that. And you can change the thickness of the pen. You can change the color. You can clear. But you can probably think of some other use cases for this potentially. I mean, this is basically a little paint tool, and you can address, you can grab the image out of this. And save this and store this. So if we pull in an image control and we change this to be pen demo pen input, and change this to be image demo image, and this image could be pointing to anything. This could be pointing to a URL, this could be pointing to a media file that you uploaded, or this could be pointing at the image of the pen input that you have. So as this gets written into the pen input, then our image is updating as well. So we can do some erasing, and you can see how, maybe you've already come up with some ideas for making some sort of paint program or something like that in your mind. Have at it. So that was the display, and that was the pen input control. And then we've also got drop-downs. You should know what a drop-down is, but if not, a drop-down is a preset list of items that you want your user to select from. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, and the user can't edit this, and they're locked into choosing one of these values. They have to choose one. It came defaulted as 1, and you can even see that the drop-down control has a default property, and the default property is going to be what is selected by default. And in fact, the text property also has a default. This is the default text right there. And then that would be what appears to the user in that text box. So if you want them, to be queued off of, or to have some field pre-filled out for them, you could do that. And of course, a more savvy developer here is already thinking, well, what if this was a variable? Of course this could be a variable. Absolutely no reason why it couldn't be. This could be a variable. This could be something that's coming from your data source, from your Dataverse. Could be anything. Could be something coming in from an API. Or it could be blank. Most likely it's going to be blank, because if you're giving people an edit box, you mostly want it to be blank. So what you would actually use is your hint text. And hint text is a more interesting property for this. This is the hint text. And what hint text is the text that appears in the box when it's empty. And then as soon as you start typing, it disappears. So hint text is gone. But then we can bring it back, and we can use that hint text as a secondary way to indicate to our users what is going on, what we expect from that text box, basically, what's supposed to be there. So we've got the drop-down. The combo box is interesting because the combo box is it's an advanced version of the drop-down, essentially. You can see that by default, this has many more items. Generally, combo boxes are going to be used for selections where you're pulling from a very large pool. In this case, we're showing 15 items, which I guess is the default combo box sample. The other thing that you can do within a combo box that you can't do in a dropdown is it gives you a text control merged with the dropdown. That's essentially the gist of a combo is it's a text box and drop down combo together. And what you can do is you can combo selections as well, which is probably the real reason why they call it a combo box. But you can, select, as many items as you want out of this list that you're presented with. You can X out of them and so forth. And you generally are going to want to use this control for filtering or selecting or searching. I don't know. You can use this control for anything. What you can use this control for anything you can imagine, and then extract the values out of this control properly to be used for. The other nice thing about combos are they have multiple layouts on them as well. So if you come into its property, come into its properties. So I'll select, make sure you have your combo box selected. I'll rename it CMB Demo Combo Box. We didn't rename our dropdown, so I'll call this GRP Demo Dropdown. Lowercase dropdown. So now everything has been named more appropriately. We're going to keep this on the combo box sample data source. And then under fields, when you click edit, I'm not going to talk about the primary text and stuff yet, but just so you know, just so it's out there, if your collection that is being displayed within this combo box can support it, you can have a double value, like have a double value selected essentially, to where, yeah, so it's showing you a sub value. It's showing you metadata on your selection essentially. So you can have a metadata visible on your selection, and that can help assist your users in making a choice. The other way, or the third view, is a person. They call it a person view, and this lets you display an image inside your view as well. So if you have a people lookup, they'll call it a people picker, for example, in your application where you want to search by someone's email address or something like that, you can have that search be done in a combo box, and then have the search itself surface their photo from Office 365, which is pretty neat little trick you can do just to make your app look a little bit more professional, because that's what it's all about. Oh, we should call this professional app sculpting. Why didn't I do that? I'm kind of dumb. Alright, well, it's our first stream. We're still learning. So coming down the controls, we've got a date picker control here. Gist of this would obviously be to pick a date. So present the user with a calendar, and we select January 23rd, 2009. I can't remember anything significant about this day, but there you go. That's the date picker. And I call this DPK. Maybe you can come up with a different naming convention for this. The important thing about conventions isn't necessarily that you follow someone else's. It's that you always follow the one that you set for yourself and you don't deviate from it. I think that is the most important thing about a convention, is that once you've established one for yourself, is that you do not deviate. with that said, there are pre-established conventions for PowerApps, notably defined in the PowerApps white page, which I do recommend for a little light reading if you are going to be taking your PowerApps development seriously in any way. It's always a good idea to get an idea of what the established guidelines that were set by the creators of the actual platform. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to agree with them, but you should at least get a handle on what they thought. Because they probably have some pretty good insights into things. And okay, so the date picker. Now that I've gotten off my soapbox about naming conventions and stuff, we'll call this the demo date picker. And you can see the if we go into advanced, there's a couple tabs here. First of all, there's properties, then there's advanced, and then there's ideas. Ideas is Microsoft's way of trying to bring Copilot into I think it was their first way to try to bring Copilot into PowerApps, and either it's going to be extended with Copilot or something, or ideas are going to be phased out, I'm not sure. Anyway, and there's also the advanced tab. Advanced is a list of all of the properties, not just the ones available on the properties page. So the properties is a bit of a lie. Properties really means simple properties or some properties, and advanced really means all properties. And on the advanced tab, you actually get a bit more view into into the definition of the actual property. Like, for example, instead of a default, we can see there's no default here at all. In fact, there aren't very many properties here to begin with whatsoever. But if we go into advanced, we can see default date, and we can see that's set to today, which is how they got that date. And we can set the time zone and stuff like that. So the next control is a list box. A list box is very much like a drop-down, except you don't need to drop it down because it's already dropped down at all times. And it's also very much like a combo box because you can select more than one object in it at the time. Now, one thing that I didn't mention about combo boxes is that is optional. And also, searching is optional. So for example, if you disable multiple selection and disable allow searching on a combo box, this combo box is now functionally identical to a dropdown. But gives you the ability to have additional metadata and even an image attached to your search or to your dropdown. So you have options. That's what I'm trying to say. And the same thing goes for your list box. If you want to disallow multiple selections, then now we've only, every time it's 3 is selected, if I select 1, then it deselects 3. So it's functionally the same. So let's name this. Let's call this LST demo list box. And we get checkbox as well. And this is gonna probably function exactly like you would expect. These are just toggles on and off. And of course you can name this check demo checkbox, and you can set the text that you want to have appear in here as well. Like, why don't we change this up, have it be demo button. So if you need the user to be able to toggle a value to true or false, that's one way to do it. There's also radio toggles, which gives the user a group of options and then allows them to choose one or the other. And this could be, oops. This is just a table with the values of 1 and 2 in it. This could this be something else? Could this be cat and dog, for example? Sure. Why not? That's up to you. But what if we wanted to add bird as well? Sure. Why not? I don't normally make radios just because I just haven't had a need for one in any apps that I've been making recently, so I'm struggling to think of how I would name this. But I'd say RAD. We'll call this demo radio. And then we've got toggles. Toggles are like a more simplified checkbox with just a better UI for on-off indication. And these only have 2 states, obviously, and you can set its default state to be on or off. You can also set it to show its label, true or false. You can also set where the label goes, if you want it to be on the left or the right side. And of course, one thing I haven't mentioned before is the display mode of any control as well can also be toggled between disabled, edit, and view. And then that'll obviously change the way that the user can interact with it. So for example, I switched this list box to view, which now means for the user experience, I can only view this box. It's now a read-only experience. I cannot interact and choose to. I could have logic that runs that changes the user's selection to 2 visually based on some other input. But I can't physically, as the user, interact with this list box. But if I switch this back to edit, then suddenly we're editing it again, and so on and so forth. And that type of experience is available on every control. So for example, the date picker, when this is set to view, the date picker disappears, and now this is just basically a label that just displays the date. So there's an interesting way to address the idea of read-only values and presenting the user with different types of experiences for interacting with that. I want to thank you guys for watching the video. If you're just gotten to this point in the video, I haven't even addressed that at all yet. But thanks so much for tuning in, checking out the video. I hope you were able to learn anything at this point through these ramblings. And thanks for sticking it out. Really appreciate it. So after toggles, there's also slider control. So this gives the user the ability to select from a scalar. Like, this should be pretty clear how these would normally be used in an app to give the user this kind of experience. And you can go vertical or horizontal there, and you can set the mins and the maximums as well. So if we want this slider to start at 5 but go to 200, we can do that. That's no problem. And of course, I say of course, we should be able to get a value out of this. So let's say this is SLD demo slider. And maybe we can set this text to be demo slider's value. So we can just query our slider's value right there. So when we don't have our mouse over the knob, we can still see what it's set to. Put that right there. We also get a rating card. Should be pretty familiar control as well. Just are able to set the ratings. I've never used this control at all, but I don't know what show value means. I don't actually know what that means. Show value on or off doesn't seem to matter. You can as well scale this too. What do we get under advanced for these? I've really never used this control at all. But it's cool. I kind of want to use it. And then I'm guessing we just call this rate demo rating. So we can extract our value out of it like that. The same way that we did with the slider. So controls are your friends. Controls are amazing. And there's a lot of them, and they're really useful and awesome, just depending on what you're trying to do. The next one is timer. Timer is an incredible control. First of all, the timer is a button. It functions as a button. So off the rip, it's pretty much a stopwatch control. and just tapping the button will start and stop the watch. Timers have durations. They can be set to auto repeat. They can be set to auto start. That has to do with screen visibility. So for example, if the timer is on a screen and that screen becomes active, the timer automatically starts. If that's set to true, this can also be set to a variable. Like there's no, this everything can be set to variables as well. So this can be fired at your choosing. We can, start this timer when the user pushes a button, or when some action happens, or something like that. They also get, the view and disabled as well. A lot of use cases for timers will involve putting a timer on a control or putting a timer on a screen, setting the timer to be not visible, and then putting code in the on timer start or on timer end of the timer. And then that will give you the ability to have, code that runs on a fixed interval. If you need to do data refreshing, or you need to do some sort of polling, or anything that you need to do in an interval, you're gonna do that with a timer. And we'll call him Tim Demo Timer. So we have Rat and Tim. The next things, edit form and display form. I'm gonna skip these for now, and we'll come back to them. Rich text editor is pretty much what you would expect it to be, except probably not as good as you would hope that it is. But yeah, the rich text editor gives the user the ability to edit in rich text. They can type in bold. They can do anything that you could normally do in rich text. And then, of course, your data source will have fields that can pull that rich text back. And, you can use this to, create a more rich user experience with rich text, or, have the user enter, word processing data, or, anything that you would need for, rich text for. You guys know what your use cases are. It's there for you. The issues that I have with the rich text editor is it's not robust. It's about as crappy, and sorry for using the term crappy, but it's about as crappy as the rich text editor in SharePoint, but worse. And it's got some inconsistencies in the way that it renders text, and maybe this is my fault and not the fault of the control, but my experience with the rich text editor is that it can give an inconsistent experience with text, with the same text saved on one screen versus another screen may give different results, and it's a bit frustrating to say the least. So the rich text control is powerful. Do recommend using it if you need to. Just be aware that you may not be able to use the rich text editor as a way to write rich text into fields and have them be displayed to the user on a label or an HTML label in the way that you expected it to. Okay, so that's the rich text control. In a nutshell. I know we're just loosely glossing over a lot of these controls, but and then there's a couple of premium controls, the address input and chatbots, which we're just not going to go over because I don't think I have premium licenses on this environment right now, or on the account that I'm on in this environment. So we've looked at text label. I've used this several times, but you can use labels again. I'll look at them again. You can use labels in a variety of ways. Labels are actually incredibly powerful controls in PowerApps, and they have deeper applications than you would normally think. You can use a label. First of all, labels have a fill property. So you can come in here and you can say, give this label a background. Then labels also have a hover fill. So when your mouse hovers over the label, it will change colors as well. So essentially labels have all of the same abilities as buttons. They also have an on-click event too. So if you want to fire some event, when the user selects the label with their mouse button, you can do that too. So we can do that as well. I'm not gonna go into the formula right now for that, but essentially labels are just really, really, really powerful thing. Like labels are probably gonna be your most used control depending on what you're trying to do, and they can do a multitude of things. If you just give them a chance. And then the next their cousin, labels have a cousin, and their cousin is the HTML control, or the HTML text label. They call it HTML text. This is a label that can render HTML. So you can see its default text in here is set to a markup. And if we want to change this markup, if we want to add more markup, we can do so. And you probably noticed right away the coolest thing about PowerApps, or one of the coolest things, is your changes are happening in real time, right? So if I remove this double quote at the end of this line, we've got an error here in this string, and the string just straight up disappears. If I know what the error is, of course, because I just created the error myself. So I'll add it back, and we can see our string appear right again in real time. And you saw that change when I was adding the underlined markup, and I just delete the U and change this, show my HTML text here, and it just appears right away. So the really cool thing about working in Canvas apps and PowerApps is that you're live, quote unquote, all the time. And that's why holding the Alt key is important if you want to execute code in a button or change to another screen or something like that while you're working inside your app, you can do that through your own interface and check your own code pathways and test your code without going into the play view, which is really cool. The only place that gets really hairy is obviously entering in text. You can see I just tried to enter in text into my text box while I was holding Alt, and that's never a good idea. So if you do need to like enter text in to your text box or something like that during your edit session, you're going to need to go into preview mode. But most other controls can be interacted with pretty well through just holding Alt. And so again, getting back to the HTML control, and getting back to what I was talking about like an hour ago now about how PowerApps are basically websites. This label control is how it's an extremely powerful way to format data and display it to your user. Because of the ability of the capability of adding markup and the capability of appending strings and concatenating data inside of the markup, we'll have to use our imagination, but as we get deeper into the series, you'll see how powerful the applications of HTML text can be in having data formatted for the user. And it can really save us on a ton of development time. Just instead of creating, galleries to display data pulled from tables, when we can just simply create, a gallery that displays a whole bunch of HTML text instead. And, we can even more rapidly develop. And, then when we add, using ChatGPT on ChatGPT, on top of that to build our reports and stuff like that for us, it's the rapidness at which you can develop things becomes truly apparent. It's really incredible. So that is your HTML text, and you can display anything in here. I've used like an inline CSS to create gradients. I've seen people program games and render the game kind of in HTML text, I think. You can do a lot with PowerApps if you're determined. You can do a lot. There's also, I think I need to make a new screen, so maybe let's talk about that for a second. Let's call this demo screen, demo controls demo screen. Because now we're going to look at media. And some of these are not going to be, let's just take a look. First of all, if you want to make a new screen, you just tap this and you've got all your different types of pre-set layouts you want to create. I haven't gone into containers yet, so you guys don't know what any of this means, or maybe you do. And there's also pre-created templates for you as well. So like these screens will create a header for you and then add a gallery, or whoops, that's not what I want to push. I'll delete that. So they'll add like a gallery, or they'll add some other stuff for you. Like for example, we'll just click this one, and this just creates a confirmation screen for you. All this is done is really just added an icon. This is an icon, the checkbox icon. We can change this to anything. a label, which with a hard-coded string, this was successfully completed. And then a circle shape behind the icon. Is it really not going to let me undo that? Wow. You hate to see it. But there's a circle shape behind the icon just to make it stand out more. And that's it. That's the whole screen. And so this is just something that's built in for you that if you're just a total noob and you're like, I'm making an app and after my submit, I need a success screen. What do? I go in the templates and I click success screen and so on and so forth. And there's other types of screens that you can build from the templates. We're gonna add a blank screen and I'm gonna delete the screen. And I'm gonna call this media demo screen. And we'll look in the media. I'm gonna skip layouts because I haven't even really talked about data at all yet. Data is the secret sauce that makes PowerApps incredible. But right now we're just looking at controls, which are like, trying to think of the right analogy here. It's gonna not make any sense. Data is the secret sauce, and controls are the ingredients, I guess. And your app is the meal. I don't know if this was a good idea to have started down this path. Anyway, in the media tab, these are just more controls. We already saw the image, but this is your sample image. I wonder what... Do I have an image? Oh, you know what? I don't have the Office connected. I was going to connect to Office and see what my user image is, but I don't have that connected, and that's... I don't think that's what we want to do right now. So we'll say for now that this is image, and if you have anything added in media, you can upload stuff and pull us in. Like, I don't know. Do I have anything on my desktop? Not really. Okay. But yeah, you pull this in and set this image. That. Then there is 3D object. So this can pull in GLB files. This is pulling in something from online. You can see this is a URL. I've never used this component or this control before, but apparently this can view 3D models that you have exported from some tool, and that's pretty awesome. If you need that for your app, it's right there. And you've got your model, and you've got a reset button here to reset this, and I would imagine that there are some other advanced properties you can deal with in that. There's also the camera. I don't have a camera turned on right now, or actually I don't even have a camera plugged in, but if you do, or you're on your phone, this is where your camera is going to show up. So for example, if you need to have your user take a picture of something and send it to you inside the app, you got a camera control right here, and this camera will be able to access your application's camera, or your device's camera, excuse me. Then there is a mixed reality measuring camera. Haven't used this either, but I would imagine this control is used as like a virtual tape measure for getting room dimensions, measuring things, so on and so forth. There's also a barcode reader as well. So yeah, these are only available on device that support this. So, but there's barcode reading. So if you need it to make an inventory app and you need to work with your barcoding system, there you go. There's also videos, so you can display video files in your app. This is really loud. And you can load these videos either from local media if you have short video files that you have saved inside your app that you are pulling in every time the user downloads it, or you could download those video files potentially as like blobs from a database and then render those videos into the control. Or you could point this control to videos that you have stored in SharePoint Online, for example, is a solution that I've done before. Or there is also the Microsoft Stream control, which is an application that is sort of in its sunset years for Microsoft, which is an app for hosting videos. So instead of having your videos stored in like a SharePoint document library, you could have them stored on Microsoft Stream, which is their hosting platform for video hosting. But I think it's kind of being sunset. So use that at your own risk. Then there is audio. So if we need to load in an audio file, play. I assume this is the yeah, it's just the same audio that plays in the video. You can also pull in your mic, and I guess you can record files. Yeah, you can record audio files. I was actually just recently saw a project, not completely, but tangentially of a project or projects that people are working on that use OpenAI Whisper technology with the microphone control inside of PowerApps to record users' voice, send data to Whisper through API to encode it, and then have OpenAI's ChatGPT then act on that audio data. It's really, I mean, the applications are like endless, really. Once you hook in technology like that, and you'll have to make some incredible decisions and hard choices at some points, when it comes to developing your applications. But understanding that technology like that is available is really cool. There's the add picture. This should bring up this brings up a file picker, and allows you to add pictures. And then same thing with import data. This should give you a file picker as well. I don't know what export data does, actually. Kind of scared. The heck does export data do? That doesn't do anything. Cool. What is this? Is this just a? It has a data source property connected to it. So you use this for something, but otherwise it just seems to be a button. I'm not sure what the purpose of this control is, in fact. The export data control, media control. Unsure. There's also a PDF viewer. There is built-in functionality inside of PowerApps that's in experimental that allows you to capture contents of a screen and convert it into a PDF, which can be very useful to be able to send information to people. Be able to capture reporting or something like that, convert it into PDF format, send it to someone through a flow or through email or something, or then upload that to a SharePoint or to a OneDrive or to a database, or do any number of things with that. Really useful. And there is the premium map control, which I'm not going to click on because you don't have premium, but you can create essentially like Google Maps or types of experiences for your users with GPS control. With the GPS capabilities of your device. It's really cool. Then there's also I didn't name any of these things because I was really lazy, but we'll name this screen call this icons demo screen. There are icons, shapes, charts, and then the mixed reality building stuff that we talked about before. But mainly we just need to add like one. The icons in PowerApps are the icon library, is pretty robust. I think it's got 100 something icons, I'm not sure, but it's got these actions, so we can set pins. It's got a lot of the basic buttons that you would expect, or that you would expect to see in a Microsoft UI. Like it's got the hamburger. It's got filtering icons that you would expect that you understand from your Microsoft software. Sorting. It's got like a save icon. It's also got nav icons for moving through your application. It's also got objects for tagging, for lines. We've got lightning bolts. We've got errors, notifications, printing, so on and so forth. And we've got glyphs as well, so we can give it a nice smiley face. Make sure you guys give this video a nice thumbs up and a smiley face in the comments too if you've gotten this far. Thank you. There's also shapes as well. Unfortunately, I don't think that shapes, let me just triple check here. But shapes don't, and I already knew this, but I was just double checking, but shapes do not seem to have a property that denotes what shape they are. So once you make a shape, this doesn't make sense to you, but it will in a second, but once you make a shape, it's that shape forever. Like for example, this triangle will always be this triangle. And I can't change this shape to be this right arrow, for example. But where I was saying this doesn't make sense to you is icons don't work the same way as shapes. Icons are actually more flexible, and the icons themselves come with an icon property. So for example, I can change this icon to be the pencil from the smiley face, whereas this shape I cannot. I hope that makes that more clear. Shapes are great, they're useful, and you want to use them if you need them, but they're always going to be that shape. So if you want to create some kind of interface that uses these shapes in some way dynamically, you're going to need to have multiple copies of, multiple instances of the shapes and be hiding it and showing them and so forth. That's all. And the last thing are charts. I'm just going to move this crap over. And by move it over, I mean delete it. The last thing are charts. There's line charts, pie charts, column charts, and then there is the all-encompassing Power BI tile, which could be, anything created inside of Power BI. So Power BI is definitely beyond the scope of this video, especially considering I really am not very good at Power BI. So I have to learn Power BI first before we do a video on it. So that's going to be down the line. But Power BI is just another slice of the Power Platform. And Power BI gives you really strong tools to develop views or data slicing and comparison and reporting. So if your business consists of collecting a lot of different data points, then Power BI can be your bestest friend in helping analyze strengths and weaknesses in your business. So there's that. Those are our charts. So those are the different types of controls that are available to you in PowerApps that you can, utilize as your top layer, your front end to your low code environment. And we briefly looked at the idea of these template screens that also exist. So we can pull in a template feature screen, and then this actually is there. There we go. There's like fake people inside my org. So this is just a basic template screen that if you know the names of the people in your org, you can surface them here, and then this is just a nice like little template. You can build an app off of this even if you don't know what you're doing. Basically is what I'm trying to say is like this might be your app. This might be the whole app that you need for your org, just to get you started, get you going. But one thing you can do is you can make these template screens and you can kind of see what they did to create this. They're using the Office 365 users connector. This is like the absolute worst first introduction into coding that I could probably have made for you guys. To create the browser gallery, they're just using those connectors, and they're setting the visibility of this based on if someone's searching in the text box. So it's really cool. So if we set that to true, then it's always showing. But if we hide it, then it's only going to show if we type in the box. And there's other types of template screens. There's a calendar template. This is going to give you a calendar screen. And not only that, but this is going to look into your logged in user's Office calendar. This isn't just some random calendar. This is your logged in user's Office 365 calendars, events, and scheduled meetings are going to show up in this calendar. So you can see that I have no events scheduled. But if I opened Outlook and made a meeting for myself, that would show up in here. And So we can make a meeting potentially. And we'll schedule this for 8/6. I don't have anything available on 8/6, probably because it's the weekend, right? Yeah, nobody works on the weekend. So we'll make this for 8 a.m. Tomorrow. Let's make it for 9 a.m. We'll sleep in. That'll just be a 30-minute. And we'll send that. So now I should have something on my calendar for tomorrow, right? Hello? There we go. Had to refresh my calendar. Or maybe I was on the wrong calendar, but either way, there we go. So now if we look at my calendar for tomorrow, you can see that I have something set at 9 a.m. And I guess this is supposed to be the location. I don't know. It should probably be like a Teams Bridge or like a Dunkin' Donuts somewhere or something. I don't know. But yeah, this Power platform is incredible, and just what I want to do over the next course of weeks of streams and videos on this channel is just continue to go over this platform in depth, in more detail, and actually start building applications with you guys and introducing you to programming concepts that I've learned over the years, and concepts and ideas inside PowerApps that I've learned, best practices, and so on and so forth. So if you enjoyed that, great. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and come on back for the next video. Look forward to seeing you then. Everyone have a great day, and see you next time.